Africa's regional bloc, ECOWAS, said it was easing sanctions imposed on Guinea and Mali, a day after announcing a similar decision for Niger, another country under military rule. The bloc imposed sanctions following military coups in the countries, sanctions following military coups in the countries between 2020 and 2023. ECOWAS said it was lifting financial and economic sanctions against Guinea and ending restrictions on the recruitment of Malians to professional positions within the bloc's institutions. And of course, joining me to make sense of this is Patrick Kadima, a legal analyst, and also Leonard Mbule Nzenge, of course, African Affairs analyst. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. All right, and I understand, great, and I understand that Patrick will join us of course, in the course of the conversation. But let me start off with what the president of the ECOWAS Commission actually did say during that meeting. I mean, he said quite a number of things, but he said this categorically, that now let me make it very clear what I have listed is not exhaustive. Political sanctions have not been lifted. Border closures have not been lifted, and commercial sanctions have been lifted. But he went on to say that there are targeted sanctions as well as political sanctions that remain in force. I think our sanctions regime should be assessed correctly. The list I have given relates mainly to Niger because all the other countries still have political sanctions on them. And it goes on to say that for now, other countries, political sanctions remain. This is the limited ability to attend. That means limited ability to attend ECOWAS summit as well as ministerial sessions. And it goes on to say, I mean, quite a lot of things the president of the ECOWAS Commission did say during that meeting. Now, my question to you is this. What do you make of the summit itself? And would you say that some of the resolutions reached are actually significant?
First and foremost, thank you for having me once more on your very informative program. Yes, it was a very momentous summit. As you know, ECOWAS has been at a crossroads for the past month or so after Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali announced that they were leaving the organization as a result of their anger regarding the sanctions. As we noticed, Niger had borne the biggest brunt as they had been prevented from carrying out commercial transactions, cross-border transactions, and that had had a very significantly negative impact on the economy as well as the overall state of the country. And it stemmed from, the military coup which had occurred. And as we've noted, the three countries had said that they're going to leave ECOWAS regional bloc, and beforehand they had spoken, that is in September, they had spoken about the creation of the Alliance of Sahel States. So the decision to remove the sanctions, that is the economic ones with respect to Niger, to Mali, and to a different extent Guinea, because their situation is somewhat different compared to the Sahel countries, is very pragmatic because ECOWAS has been at a crossroads, and it was seen as and I believe that it was an appeasement measure to ensure that there isn't a further deterioration of relations between those three states, as well as Guinea, which is, like I said, in a different context with respect to its political transition vis-a-vis the ECOWAS regional bloc.
I mean, I'd like to go to Patrick on this one. What's your take concerning the summit that just, of course, concluded in Nigeria's capital, Abuja? And in the words of Leonard, do you think ECOWAS has been at crossroads in the previous months as regards this recent issues?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. So I do believe that ECOWAS is at crossroads currently in terms of these three countries that have with the sanctions that have been lifted, in these three countries. Because I mean, a while back we were being told about a military intervention. Now, after this summit, we are being told about the relaxation of certain sanctions that have been imposed on these countries. I mean, the summit as well also spoke about, in the spirit of Lent and Ramadan, that that was one of the reasons they also relaxed the sanctions. So for me, I believe that I think the ECOWAS is at crossroads. It doesn't know what it wants. It doesn't know how to approach this. They claim that this is for to ensure that more dialogue happens. I think for many a dialogue is the best solution currently rather than a military intervention. But I don't think a dialogue will solve the issues that that have been, affecting this region, especially the three countries. But we will have to wait and see where this dialogue and the relaxation of sanctions takes us.
All right, Patrick, I'd still like to stay on you. Do you think this recent U-turn by ECOWAS places them, at an advantage point when it comes to this issue? Because, like you said, at some point, they were talking about military, intervention, and right now, they imposed sanctions, talked about military intervention, and right now they're saying, you know what, let's of course relax the commercial side of the sanction, even though the political sanctions still hold water. Does this put ECOWAS, in a vantage point, or does it sort of water down the organization's influence and maybe relevance in the region?
It's a tight call, but for me, I am of the opinion that I think it watered down its influence in the region. These countries have said that they wanted to leave the region. ECOWAS says, no, do not leave, let us try to find a solution and so on and so forth. But I think the relaxation of certain sanctions does water down the influence of ECOWAS. If we look at the influence ECOWAS has over the years in the region, in times when we saw how it intervened in the Gambia and so on and so forth, it cannot be said it's the same ECOWAS that is there currently. Yes, situations differ, it's on a case-by-case basis. We cannot use the Gambia case study and to implement now because times have changed, the geopolitics change, countries have different agendas and so on and so forth. But I just don't see that the relaxation of these sanctions gives ECOWAS an advantage. For me, rather, it gives, you are dealing here with, certain individuals that have told themselves that, they will take power by force, not through democratic means. And here you are relaxing certain sanctions and thinking that it will give you an advantage. These, after all, are soldiers. They work with command, that.
Patrick, are you there? Okay, I think we lost connection with Patrick there. Let's move to Leonard and know his opinion on this. Leonard, do you think that the recent U-turn by the group sort of waters down their influence, in the region or places them at a vantage point?
No, I agree with Patrick. He articulated it perfectly. ECOWAS, they tried to talk a tough talk in the beginning, speaking about military intervention. And, I think that it was premised a lot on President Tinubu's desire to show that he's the vanguard of diplomacy, of democracy in the region. He wanted to show that Nigeria is the champion of, diplomacy as well as, promoting civil liberties in that regard. But then it backfired significantly, and it's due in large part because ECOWAS over time has failed to react when you have previous situations. So for example, Cote d'Ivoire, 2020, President Ouattara went in for a third presidential term. Nothing was done. President Alpha Conde, before he was overthrown in Guinea in 2020, he also decided to go in for a third presidential term. ECOWAS has been a lame dunk. They didn't say anything to that regard, but then now when it came to the various military coups, which were as a result of the rigging of elections, the violation of civil liberties by the presidents in the countries such as Guinea and Mali, and because of the deteriorating security situations in Niger and Burkina Faso, nothing was done to that regard. And I think it was bad timing with respect to what course of action they wanted to take. Furthermore, ECOWAS is on the back burner. They've at a significant disadvantage because Niger, despite the disadvantageous position they had been with respect to the placing of sanctions, the closure of the borders, and more or less trying to isolate them, because remember, France was also pushing that agenda. They've been able to stand tall, and now they are at a position whereby all of these actions have forced ECOWAS to, take an about face, not only with respect to their country, but with respect to the other military regimes. And, just an example of that, Niger, it has defaulted upwards of $519 million in loan payments and loans, which they are taking from the various financial institutions in the West African Economic and Monetary Union. And a lot of those loans are from banking and financial institutions in countries like Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire, which are the backbone of the franc zone. So, taking all of that into consideration, the sanctions were having a counterproductive effect, and they were not only having an effect on the countries which they were intended towards, but on the economies of the countries in the region as well.
Okay, I mean, just to stay on you, 30 seconds, what do you anticipate as reaction or response from these countries?
Well, it's going to be, they could be some sort of appeasement, because now I think ECOWAS has done that with the hope that, they're going to stick to the timetables. With respect to Niger, there's going to be the release of President Mohamed Bazoum. I think they're going to want these military regimes to give them something in return for the lifting of these sanctions.
How about you, Patrick?
We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, this is a bit tricky, and you're dealing with military individuals here, that work with a certain mindset. I don't think negotiation is their best, strength, and we'll have to see. But I just believe that what ECOWAS has done currently, it is not to give themselves an advantage, but to give these three countries an advantage over them in terms of the negotiations that will take place. Obviously there will be certain trade-offs that will happen, but for me, I think these three countries will come out top, of the negotiations. They will get what they want, and ECOWAS will remain, behind with the suggestions or the objectives they tried to achieve.
All right, thank you so much for your contribution, gentlemen. Patrick Dima, a legal analyst, and also Leonard Bole Nze-Ege, that's African Affairs analyst. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.